use the advantage of like having texture with colored pencil. Like,
why wouldn't you like paint?
yeah.
Like, you know, it's a pain in the ass to do that. My ex-girlfriend used to use she would do all the underwashes with watercolor, and then she'd go in and sort of go over the pencil, sort of like what this person's doing, and it was cool.
Yeah.
I have one of them. So which way you lean in here? Because we got a few different things going on here.
Yeah, I still have to like, I was gonna do color comps first before I like decided on what kind of style I wanted, but these are just the ones I like narrowed it down to.
It's sort of like this. Is this watercolor or colored
Yeah.
pencil, or is this like? It looks like it could be a couple different things.
Yeah, that's watercolor and colored pencil.
And then is she going over this with like something else? It almost looks like she's going over that texture again with like gouache or something.
I'm pretty sure she just like layers it, but obviously not to the point of it like getting rid of the texture.
It's like this right here, this little part here, that feels like paint.
Oh yeah, what she does is she just like layers from light to dark, then she like leaves little like areas. That's just watercolor showing, basically.
Underneath?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah, and again, I mean, that's a style. The only thing I'm trying to make sure, you know, because I've said this before, I don't want to change anybody's style or anything like that. But the only thing I do want to do is like, there's certain things that like, you know, if you go down that path with your work, I just don't think that many art directors will respond. I'm not talking about this. I like this stuff. But like that colored pencil stuff, not that many people are going to respond to that in a sort of professional sense.
Like, that kind of stuff takes so long. It's like if you're not trying to do like fine art and you're just trying to like do design, like that takes forever. It's just like
it's not going to happen.
It's not the right type of art for like
totally. That's really smart what you just said, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
We were just talking about this. I don't know if it was in this class or another class, but a lot of these things, they came out of the pre-digital era, like all these weird recipes and mixed media techniques and all these things, because illustrators wanted to produce whatever kind of work they wanted to produce, and they had insane deadlines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they still had these crazy deadlines before digital, and that's kind of mind-blowing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where they would go, like even Drew Struzan, I mean, he's got some stories where people would go call him, I don't know, like the day before or something, and go, oh, we need a poster, a movie poster or whatever, something crazy like that. And they go, we'll send a courier to pick it up tomorrow at 5:30. You know, and you're like, that's insane. I've got to design it. I've got to draw it. I've got to transfer it. I got to gesso the board. I got to, you know, figure out what the hell I'm doing color-wise. I got to do all this stuff overnight. You know,
even if we're doing it digitally, it would take a long time, but traditional just adds so much more time on top of it.
Yeah, well, that's probably why he designed, or he took the old grisaille technique. He modernized it by blowing the color in and kissing it with color with an airbrush, and then finishing it out with a colored pencil, because that gets this highly rendered, cool, kind of semi-rough, but when you're away from it, it looks super tight kind of technique, and that became his style, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which probably partly came out of him just going, wow, this looks really cool, and I can do it really fast, you know?
Yeah.
And then he started doing really cool things where he would, you know, take different things and he'd rake through the gesso while it was wet and create like patterns and things in the gesso before he even started painting.
That's cool.
I mean, by the way, you could still do that digitally. You know, you could just take a board or a piece of cardboard or something, throw your gesso on it, and do the same thing, scan it in and pull it in, right?
Yeah.
But which one are you, or do you not know yet which one you're leaning towards?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I think I'd want to do like something with colored pencils, not just like flat color, but because of where I was going with the drawing, I felt like that might be the best option, but I still have not decided. So
now, one thing you could do, and I mean, there's a million things you could do. You're going to do it traditional, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could go, I like to do this. You can take this drawing straight the way it is,
Mm-hmm.
and this is why part of why I like it, because I don't have to redraw it. You can wet mount it down onto like illustration board, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to draw it. You already drew it. And
Mhm.
then that's sealed, right? So then you got this sealed, it's like this stuff is just off of Xerox and it's been wet mounted down to illustration board, right?
So like transferring it or?
No, I'll put a video up and it shows how to do it. Okay.
Yeah, because last time what I did is what I usually do is I just like use chalk or something and I print it out like half of it and then.
And it depends on how you're going to execute it. But one thing I like about that technique is if I'm going to do like a mixed media acrylic thing, it works like a champ, right? If I'm going to do like what I was saying with this, if I was going to do traditionally, one thing I might do, and if I want to play with colored pencil, I might wet mount it down, let it dry. It dries really fast. Tape it off, and then go, because then you get, at the end, I get a nice clean border.
Yeah.
And then start washing transparently and stuff, your acrylics over it and start building it up. And then you build it up to X amount of point. And then if you want to do it, then you can coat that with another material and that'll give it tooth again. And now you can go over it with colored pencil.
So you do that on what kind of paper?
I usually do it on illustration board.
Oh, okay.
But you could do the wet mount technique. You could do that on if you got a what do you call it? Mat board laying around, you could use that. You could even use chipboard. Sometimes I've even taken the the chipboard off the back of a paper pad or something, and I use this because it doesn't matter because I'm wet mounting the white image over it anyway.
Oh.
But illustration board works really nice. Then you got a fairly rigid surface. You don't have to redraw it. If you screw it up, you just wet mount another one. The only trick to it, I would say, is like if you look at this one, I don't know if you can see this. There's a little bit of wrinkling in there. You see that? Right there.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, that's because this is a real. And then if you look at this one, it's not like that. It's a little nicer, right? Mm-hmm. That's just because I just used an ultra cheap printer paper, which is just sort of like, it's like one step away from newsprint. So what I usually use is I just use the same, it's still a printer paper, but it's just got just a tiny bit, little more weight to it. And that usually works great. Bristol board works great, but you can just use the kind of paper I draw on is a Hammer Mill. It's a digital print paper or whatever. It's not a real expensive brand or anything, but it's just got just enough weight to it that works really well with this because it takes water a little better. And then once I wet mount it and seal it, that's bulletproof. And then it doesn't matter anymore. That drawing is going nowhere. Nothing's going anywhere. Nothing's moving. Right.
Can you use this for gouache and?
You could probably do gouache on it, but I think I'd probably, if I was going to do that, I'd probably, I need to try it. I'll try it today, actually. So, and if it doesn't take it right off the bat, I could probably go over it with one of the two materials I use that creates a tooth, and it probably would take it. Yeah.
Okay.
And then what I do a lot of different things. Like I sometimes I start them with watercolor on the wet mounted board. And then the watercolor doesn't really want to stick to the acrylic, which I like. So I can play with it. It makes interesting marks. Then I'll seal that. Then I'll start working in acrylic over that. And then I might, I could seal that and go to pencil. I could seal that and then go to oil. I could, on and on and on. Right. And by the way, the wet mount technique, if I take that image and I wet mount it down, I've got a barrier between that and the board now. So I could go right onto that, surface with oil and it makes sense and it'll take it that way. Does that make sense?
I don't really know how wet mounting works. So
basically, here's how it works. You get Liquitex matte medium, right?
Oh, okay.
It's really simple. And I have a video of it and I'll put it up. And then you slather the back of the paper that you're drawing. You slather the back of it, you slather the board, you put it down. I take I take an old credit card and I kind of squeegee it out, right?
Mhm.
That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So essentially you've glued it to the board. You put the glue on the back of the drawing and you put the glue on the board, you put it down, you squeegee it out, and then I just take another quote and I just go right over the whole top of it, and then I just let it dry. That's it.
Oh, okay. So this wouldn't necessarily work for something like watercolor if I didn't want to use watercolor.
It doesn't like watercolor, but I like the way it takes watercolor. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I could probably go if I covered it with a texture like I do when I want to go to pencil or something, then it probably would. I'll play around with that tomorrow, and I'll put up what I think. Yeah,
Okay.
I
So
usually start with watercolor acrylic.
do you print it on just like you said any cheap paper or like fairly like just like not super heavyweight and that works fine?
I just use I think the paper I use, and again, it's just the paper I draw on, and the paper I like drawing on because it's really smooth. It's a printer paper, right?
Mm.
It's not a super expensive printer paper. The only reason that works good is because it just has a little more weight. It's like 32 pound. What I don't like to use is that really super cheap printer paper that's almost like newsprint.
Yeah.
But anything it's like just got a little bit of weight to it is fine. Like if you have like a little better paper for like printing photos on or something, that would probably work. Because essentially, or not essentially, you're going to be sealing it under plastic, so it doesn't matter. As long as it just doesn't disintegrate with water, it's fine, right?
Yeah.
Because I used to get all weird with it, and I'd print on Bristol board. And then I realized, like, why am I doing this? As long as it's just robust enough to take the water, it's fine. Because once it's sealed under the plastic, it doesn't matter what kind of paper it is.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Have you ever used acrylic gouache?
Yeah, I have some in the garage.
What do you think of it?
I like the Liquitex came out with their own brand just fairly recently. I like it. I mean, it's acrylic, right?
Yeah, but basically like water soluble.
No, it's not water soluble. It's acrylic, right? But it's been
But you
formulated.
can thin it with water is what I mean.
Well, you can thin gouache with water, right?
You mean like regular acrylic?
Well, regular acrylic, just everything thins with water. Gouache, acrylic gouache, all of it,
I
right?
haven't really used acrylic, but aren't you like not like quote unquote supposed to thin it with water? I thought that was the only difference. Obviously you can, but like
No, acrylic's a water media.
oh okay.
And the only difference, okay, so the acrylic gouache, it's acrylic. The difference is because it's not going to reactivate the way gouache does. So,
Yeah.
like if you go a week later and you go, oh, I want to soften that edge, you can do that with gouache. You can't do it with acrylic gouache.
Yeah.
The main thing with acrylic gouache is that it's formulated to lay down like gouache, so it has that matte surface, which I like,
Oh right. Yeah.
and it's also hyper opaque, right?
Mhm.
So one thing I do like using it for, like if I'm doing an illustration or something, and I go, maybe there's some telephone lines in there, or some real fine lines or something. I might do all my brush and scale stuff with a liner brush and the acrylic gouache because it'll just flow really opaquely, and it's a lot trickier to get acrylic to flow like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because acrylic to get it flow like that, you're going to keep losing opacity. And then I took the acrylic gouache out right when I bought it. And I just went out and did some painting out on the rim or whatever. And man, it was hard to get that stuff to not be opaque.
What I find is like a lot of like lighter colors, at least with Holbein acrylic gouache, they're like pretty transparent. Like the white, it's hard to build it up to make it opaque.
I've never liked anybody else's acrylic gouache. I've tried it. Like I tried it a long time ago and I was like, this stuff sucks. And I think the best one so far is the Liquitex. And I think that came out within a year or two ago.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And again, if we're in class, I could just bring some in, but we're not. And it just depends on what you're using it for. If people are going like, oh, I'm going to use it because I like gouache and it's going to be like gouache, it's like, no, it ends up with the appearance of the flatness and the matteness of gouache and the opacity of gouache, but you can't reactivate it, you know? So most people are working with gouache and they don't realize that. It's like, you're not probably going to like acrylic gouache because you think you're going to be able to do what you can do with gouache with it, and you really can't.
Yeah, exactly.
But the reason I like the wet mount technique is that I don't have to redraw my drawing. And what I like about that is if I nail the drawing, I go, I really like this drawing, I don't have to try and recapture it. It's like, there it is. Right.
Yeah, that's true.
And I
That's
love
what I'm always nervous about doing when I like finally get a good drawing, like how to transfer it.
that's why I like either rub down transfer, which is how I usually do my stuff, or if I'm on canvas, like a big canvas or something, I draw directly on the canvas. Then I go back and forth with gesso so I can just work the drawing out on the canvas. And then when I get it right on the canvas, I'm like, that's it. I don't have to transfer it. There it is. Right.
Yeah.
But I just sort of developed a simple technique of like being able to work out the drawing on the canvas without having to worry about it. I can keep correcting it and changing it and all that kind of stuff. All right. Does that make sense? All that?
Yes.
And I will try, I'll put up the wet mount thing. And I'll do something else too. I'll put up, I have another video where I just kind of touched on doing this sort of, you know, acrylic and then going to pencil kind of thing. Because to me, if you're going to go, I mean, you can do it either way. If you did this on a watercolor paper and you started with watercolor, well, that's not going to slick up the surface. So you can still go color pencil over the watercolor because it's not going to slick up the surface, right?
Yeah.
Now, with acrylic, you're slicking up the surface because you're putting plastic all over the surface. And then again, I probably said this, but I always tell people, I go, think about going to a Rubbermaid trash can and trying to draw your address on it's not going to happen with a Prismacolor pencil, right? And that's kind of what you're trying to do when you try and draw on acrylic, right? So now the reason Drew Struzan it worked is because he was kissing the whole thing with an airbrush. Well, the airbrush pebbleizes the color and creates a texture, right?
Yeah, for the color pencil to hang.
Yeah, to have a tooth to. And then I use either a clear gesso or ultra matte medium or something like that, and then that creates a tooth too, right?
So I've never tried gouache and colored pencil, but would that work just like regular gouache? Like on watercolor?
Yeah, because gouache dries matte.
Yeah.
So it's really good to take pencil and things like that.
Okay, I'll have to experiment. I might do that.
Yeah, if you want to just go over, you might want to do gouache because gouache is just going to keep giving you a matte surface.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to get all slick because it's designed to be matte, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing that's nice about gouache, I mean, I don't know if this really matters anymore, but it's matte, so it photographs really well.
That's true. Yeah, I love the texture of gouache. It looks.
I do too.
Yeah.
But I kind of like the way acrylic dries too. It can get sort of that dry look too. And what I do now is I varnish it with a matte varnish. I don't want it all because I played around with all sorts of different varnishes, and I don't like it to get all shiny. For some reason, I don't like that on acrylic. Acrylic, I like it to just stay kind of matte.
I don't like shiny texture in general for like.
Sometimes I like it like on an oil painting. But the only thing that bugs me about it is like if the gallery, like if you're looking at a really cool oil painting, it's been varnished like that, and the gallery hasn't lit it correctly, a lot of times you're getting so much glare on it, you have to find a spot to look at it.
Yeah.
And I don't like that, but I do like that sort of candy coated surface when somebody does it right. You know, and the other thing is that you more than likely want to, no matter what it is, maybe not gouache so much, but acrylic oil, things like that. Not really so much watercolor. The color sinks, right? Have you ever heard that term?
No, because I don't really use oil or acrylic. So.
Well, it just means it's like a molecular thing, but that's why it's a couple of reasons. Like with oil, like you go out or you're painting and you're using some medium here, like maybe some liquid or whatever you use.
Okay, I think I know what you mean.
And it'll go slick, and then it's dull and matte, and the dull part is where it's sunk. It's like a molecular thing.
So is it like the pigment separating from the binder?
Something like that. It's not. I don't think it's the pigment separate, or maybe it is. I can't remember now. but it just makes it go sort of dull, right?
Mhm.
And then when you varnish over that, it evens the whole surface out. So now you don't have matte and shiny areas. And then the colors that sink, it pulls them back out again.
Oh.
Right? Like, look at this. See how dull that is?
Yeah.
Now watch. Look at that color just pop.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So satisfying. Yeah.
Yeah, that is really cool.
So anyway, varnishing, it evens out your surface and pulls your colors back up.
Mhm.
And that's why they have retouch varnish with oil, because you can sort of retouch it. It's not a permanent varnish, but it evens your surface out. So when you're painting, you're not judging colors incorrectly.
Mhm. Yeah, the only varnishing I've done is like on like a couple tiny little acrylic wash paintings, so I don't really know much about it.
Yeah, I never liked the acrylic gouache. That other, I can't remember the one. Maybe it was Holbein. I can't remember. Is it called like acrylic gouache?
Yeah, like one more. I think
Yeah.
it's.
I tried that years ago. I hated it. It skinned a lot. It skins, right?
What does that mean?
Well, it means that like it's sort of like what old acrylic used to do, where it's like it'll, if you leave the pile of paint sitting there, it'll get a skin over it and you got to break the skin.
Yeah.
I can't stand that.
Oh, so like the Liquitex brand doesn't do that?
I don't think the new one does.
Oh.
And also, golden open acrylics are formulated to stay open, stay wet longer, and they don't skin like that. Okay, it's one of the main things I used to hate about acrylic is that they'd skin like that. It drove me crazy. And then you get clumps of paint in your brush marks, and it was just ugly looking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't really like using acrylic because it just dries so fast, and I'm always really bad at like washing my brushes right away. So like,
oh, it'll wreck your brushes.
Yeah, that's why like water-based mediums.
It's water-based. It's plastic.
Yeah. I mean like like re-wettable.
Yeah.
Water soluble.
Well, then you don't have to worry so much about it.
Yeah.
Okay, is that enough over pile of information?
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Does anybody else change anything significantly?
So if I do like color comps over the weekend, can I email them to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody can email me anything. I'm always available.
Cool. Thank you.
As long as I'm at home. And if it's just something, if I see it in my car or something and it's something I can just respond to and talk, I'll do it. But if I'm not at home, if it's something I got to like overlay or something like that, then I got to be home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Amelia, you're just nailing down your drawings?
Yeah.
Okay, this looks a little better. The gate's a little off kilter this way. Do you want that?
Yes, I tilted it on purpose, but I can straighten it out if you would prefer
The
that.
only problem I have is that it feels like it might be a mistake in the drawing. You've got to really sell me on it's either tilted or it's straight.
Okay, so
That makes sense?
more?
You could do more. You got to make sure that doesn't just feel off balance.
Okay.
You know, so it's either tilted a little more and make it very obvious or straighten it.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yep.
How are you going to execute it?
I want it to be like simple flat colors, digital with like nice inking for texture and stuff and shading.
Inking. So you're going to do it digital though, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now I was pulling, I'll talk about that in a minute. Who else? Anybody? I talked to Julia earlier. Oh, Julia, you're going to do, where are you at? Are you here?
Yes, right here.
Are you going to do really flat color like that?
Yes.
Okay. You might, how are you going to do it?
I'm going to do it digitally.
You might want to do that in Illustrator if you're familiar with Illustrator.
No, I'm not actually.
Okay. Then, yeah, you could do it in Photoshop. That's fine.
Sounds good.
And then what I said about if you're going to do something like this,
Mhm.
it's got to really be stylized. It's got to really be editorially, right?
Editorial. Okay.
Does that make sense? Styled.
Style. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just going to feel like a bunch of birds around another bird.
Sounds good.
You know what I mean? And then also I would do a vertical composition.
Sounds good.
Yeah?
Mhm.
Have you done that flat style Photoshop before?
I don't think I have. No.
Okay, so if we need to go over that, then tell me, okay?
Sounds good.
As you get closer towards it.
Mhm.
Where's Olivia?
Hello.
So what do we decide here?
So I tried doing a second iteration of the previous thumbnail at the top, and the bottom is just me testing out how I want to do my lines. Like with the sketchier kind of stuff.
And what are we saying with the hands here? I forgot.
They're like warming themselves by the fire.
Make sure it's very obvious,
Yeah.
because they can't just be doing this or this because I won't know what that is. I mean, that's a very sort of kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? And you might, yeah, I mean, you could try it, but you might need to get a little more, I don't know. I don't know if you need more person in there, but it's got to totally read that they're warming their hands, not just putting their hands in there.
Okay.
But actually, I think that's not a bad idea. Now you might need, I don't know, we'll see. If you're working on that, don't wait until Monday to run it by me. Send it to me, yeah?
All right.
What is, I know that this is representing a flag, but this, so what does that exactly represent?
Oh yeah, I wanted to be like seaweed, kind of pulling her, getting tangled up.
Okay, I get it. All right.
Yeah.
How are you going to do it? You going to do it digital?
I really like the wet mount idea. I'm gonna research that, but I'm gonna do
I'll put
digital
that-
also and
I'll
just
put that up. I'll
see
put
what
that-
works. Yeah.
I'll put that process up. I'll just put, I did a quick, I mean, I didn't go all into finish. Actually, this one, like this one was just a demo thing, but this was, I think this was wet mounted down. I know it was wet mounted down, then acrylic, and then covered it with what I used to get a texture. And then there's pencil, like a lot of pencil on top of it. You see that?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I like that technique, man, because I don't have to draw anything more than once.
Yeah, I really like the sound of that. Let's see what I can do.
And it's really simple. It's not hard at all.
Nice.
And again, I always looked at it as an insurance policy.
Oh, you can
If I-
print out as many as you want. That's
Right.
cool.
And by the way, you can wet mount it down. Like I wet mounted some stuff down today. It's like 15 minutes to dry or 10 minutes to dry or whatever. Does it, and you can boom,
Nice.
start painting,
Yeah, I like it.
And there's just a million techniques you can do around that.
I know. Yeah. It's so cool.
Because I like to go watercolor, then acrylic, then maybe some pencil, maybe some more, maybe oil, maybe just whatever I feel like doing. Like whatever I go, like I have this silly one I'm doing over here. And it's got tentacles and stuff. When I get sort of close to finish, I'll probably finish it out a little bit in oil because I want to get that real blendy kind of corally colors in there. And I'll be able to do that a little easier with oil. But I built everything else up in acrylic and stuff like that. And so it's really fast. And then I'll just that final pass in oil and boom, I'm done. Right.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'd never heard of this technique at all before.
It's just,
So
the thing that's happened was, because I still talk to people and they do this and I think it's really weird. I talk about stuff like that. And I do a lot of this stuff in my sketchbook all the time. But and they'll go, well, you don't need to do that anymore because now there's a computer. And I'm like, man, do you not get it? You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's like you're supposed to be an artist and you don't understand what I'm talking about here. I find that disturbing when people say that, because then I go, like, if it was in the context of an interview, because I've had that happen, where I'm just talking about, like, they might say something about sketchbooks or something. I get all excited, I'll start talking about this and we'll go down there and they'll go, well, you don't need to do that anymore. And as soon as they do that, I go, oh, I'm not hiring you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not because they don't know how to do that. I don't really care about that. It's that they don't get why you still
They don't have that knowledge. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
yeah, and they don't like. Do you have fundamental knowledge? Because if you had fundamental knowledge, you'd know the difference between moving paint around and how satisfying it is, and how, I don't know, just much richer it is. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But like all these things, you know, we can also go back and forth, like we talked about, and go back and forth between traditional paint, all that stuff, right?
Mhm.
Or traditional and digital, all that.
Yeah.
Like I save. Let me go through these.
But honestly, the sound of charcoal on paper hurts my soul.
The what?
The sound of charcoal on paper hurts my soul.
Yeah. Some of that screeching is kind of annoying.
I don't think there's anything I don't like about. Then get softer charcoal. I mean, I like butter.
Those are the one that those also have the sound. It's a very it's that texture when you draw. Oh,
I love charcoal. I mean, I don't really like. I don't use it as much anymore because I just don't need to, I guess. But I used to love getting those real soft, or like vine charcoal, or that real soft charcoal. You know, anything that's like buttery, I love. That's why I like oil, right? Yeah. So you should go and. Oh, that's cool right there. I never saw that one.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always rely on line, but I want to try to get away from it for this one.
Now, a lot of this stuff he's doing, I'm just going to grab this portrait because it's the only thing I have right now that's scanned. A lot of this stuff that he's doing, he might be starting. That looks like he started with like some of his textures, like this stuff. He might be grabbing things like, let's put this at 72. Let's see if that works. Things like I save these kind of things all over the place. Like this is just an acrylic wash that I just keep, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing a lot of this kind of. Now, I might reduce this down to an overlay. I always go through them first and see what I can find. That's kind of interesting. Okay, I kind of like that. Now, I could also have said, okay, so I like the coloring that it sort of darkened it and reduced the color. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I save things like that, which is just I was just testing paint. Now, a lot of times I'll come in initially and just start playing with texture if that's what I want to do. Like this one, I'm going to try something here. Because what I'm actually trying to do here is just create, I even like that. Like I could come in here and go, maybe I don't like it as purple over here. Let's see if I can do this. I'm going to put my sponge on desaturate. Let's see if I can see it's knocking it way down now. So I'm going to make a little bit of that color out of there. And I'm going, I think it's still too much color. So I'm going to take that one out for now. And then maybe I could go here and then go take the overlay out of it. See if I can find something that'll just lay over it. Kind of. I even like these marks that are starting to happen up here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to just pull it into a little darker idea. I don't like that. Trying to find something close. I'm going to leave some of that texture in there because I like that. Now, and I also save things like this. Now I might use this. Let's do this. I'm going to get a brush. I'm going to get a rough brush. Let's see how this looks. Actually, I'm going to do this. Okay, and then I'm going to do this. Now, again, I do a lot of this kind of stuff with traditional things like I'm doing right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I also might paint little bits and pieces on other bits and pieces of paper that I might think might work cool with this. And I'll just scan them and pop them in and start playing with those, right?
Yeah, I definitely want to mess around with that.
I'm going to take, let's take, I don't know if this will work. Hang on. Oh, yeah, let's go. I always forget which way I got to go with this. I think it has to go under. Hang on. I don't know why that's not giving me my edge. Hang on. Okay, hang on. Shouldn't be doing that. All right, let's do this. Oh, maybe that's why. Something weird going on with this. Hang on. Oh, that's why. Still not doing that. Hang on. Oh, I got the wrong thing here. I lost my thing I just made. Hang on. There it is. That's why. There. So now it tore up my edge a little bit. You see that?
Yeah, how did you do that?
That's just a clipping mask.
All right.
So I created a rough, that shape, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I just made a clipping mask and it just cuts off. But the weird thing about the clipping mask stuff is that it has to be underneath your image. It feels like it should be on top, but it's not. And then you just hit option and go right in between the things and hit it, and it'll just create a clipping mask, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I might take some of this, because if I was doing this and I'd painted this and I go down, I want to go down this other path. By the way, I can still go in here and paint. Oops. I should be able to go in here and still paint things in or out if I go to black and white here. I should see how I can still paint things out.
Mm-hmm.
Or in. I can paint things back in too. Oops. I'm gonna take some of that out. Okay, and then I might come back here because I have a really cool texture in here. I like this texture. Oops, wrong layer. I'm going to pull this from here. I'm going to turn it. And I'll do some stupid things to this that I would never do just to make my point. So let's go. I want to see the texture a little more, so I'm going to shrink it. That's a huge file. So what I'm basically just doing here is trying to create some sort of texture language to start. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then maybe this layer, I'm going to pick one of these colors. Oops. Maybe that. That's too dark. Let's try that. And then I'm going to go here. I'm going to see if I can switch that. And I want to keep that texture a little bit. So I might do an overlay instead. I'm going to try something else too. Hang on. Because I should have. Oh, this is a good one. And what I want to do here is get above these two layers, pick a color. Oops. And I'm just going to try and overlay over these things. Maybe a little darker. You know what? I'm going to throw one more thing in here. Well, let's do this. I don't like that white in there. I'd probably paint that out. I would paint that out. Let's go. And I would blend these pretty seamlessly. I'd get rid of that white, right?
Yeah.
I paint that out of my mask. But what I'm going to do instead of that is I'm just going to go on a new layer up here because I want to get different brush work in here. Maybe I'll pull some of that into here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll definitely mess around with that stuff.
And then I might even go crazy. I mean, it depends on what the story is and all that, but I found this I just thought was interesting. Oh, and then this, look, I could come in here, let's say, let's do this. Depending on what I was going for here. I want to see about maybe kind of halftone thing. Now, another thing here. All right, that one placed. I could come in here and I'd probably go to a bigger halftone. What I'm doing is just starting to build up sort of subtle little things. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Hang on a sec. I'm trying to get something that works here. I could even maybe go here. I probably wouldn't do this, but I could maybe go and create a layer mask here. and paint some of this out on a layer mask, right?
Yeah.
And start to reveal the things underneath again. And then there was something else I had, you know, and then if I'm going to get really into it, I could go. Now, again, some of the stuff I'd be pulling from reference, some of the stuff I'd be pulling from my own painting, some of it, but, you know, and by the way, if I make things that I think look interesting, just washes and things like that, I scan them, or I take pictures of them to keep them for later, right?
Yeah.
I've got a bunch right here that I'll give you guys. This isn't a thing that's a vector format file, but these are not vector. Okay, so I'll give you guys this. So I have all these. No, I have a different one. I have another one that's just a bunch of what do you call it? Textures. I'll give you guys all those. Yeah.
All right.
Actually, hang on a sec. Depending on what I'm doing. The trick here is building them up, figuring out your color, and then, you know, doing your thing. Hang on.
I was gonna ask too, since mine's laid out in more of like a horizontal, should I still put it on a vertical page, or how should I go about that?
Go ahead and do it horizontal, because I should have caught that earlier. And, you know, if it's a bitchin' illustration, they're going to go along with it, and they're going to figure out a way to lay it in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Because
normally what would happen is somebody's going to give you parameters.
Mhm.
So don't worry about it. I found this thing that I just thought was interesting. I thought this was kind of an interesting image just for texture.
Mhm.
And again, this would all have to serve the story. It would make no sense if it didn't, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just kind of going a little bit crazy. And then again, I'm going to figure out, like, that's even kind of cool. And then again, I'd probably go layer mask. Actually, I'd go this way. And I could start to sort of incorporate that into my illustration. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And if you notice, I'm not just using I'm using a nice rough brush, so it kind of makes sense. Okay.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to go. I'd have to make that a nice transition. I could also go. Or let's do this. Yeah, let's do that for now. I like that. Like there, I like that. And see how it's starting to get very illustrative?
Yeah.
And then, you know, if I went really crazy, I could go. I might have to reverse this to make it work because I don't want that black in there. Let's try reversing it. Yeah, that's all better. And I can find something where I could kind of find an overlay over that too. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I might, that's kind of interesting. Where was that? I even like that. See, what I like is that it's just like painting, right? So if I go here and I go, that's kind of interesting, that might lead me down a whole nother path. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I actually like this as a starting point for a whole other thing. Like, is that right there is starting to be interesting to me, right?
Yeah.
Then maybe I go, hang on. Start figuring out how I can further incorporate these things. And again, it's kind of interesting. That's kind of interesting. So this, what this makes me do is go, makes me want to go and just start straight up painting back into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, let's see. I kind of like that. But then it's like, okay, again, another layer mask. Oops. I'm going to pull this opacity up or down. And I'm starting to get too much back into realism. Oops. So I probably wouldn't go there. I almost want to start there and just start playing around with it from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That looks creepy.
But I would start painting back into it. Now I would probably go, okay, I don't need as much textures now. I've kind of got that. I got to figure out, am I going to use this as a starting point now and start to go and paint back into it? Pull this, and then I'm going to go. Or I might come back down here. Where is that? I don't even know where that is now. Here. Or, you know, I go back to here and I start working into this, right?
Yeah.
So you can kind of see how you, and then, you know, if you wanted to, you could go, you know, which is what Matt Mahern does a lot, but I'd have to find the original. I don't know if I can do this here. I could start to, you know, I could do things like, you know, add different elements into here, and I would start painting back and forth into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now I would probably come in and go and start a layer on top, and I would probably still obscure his face a little more, just get it a little more integrated into the background. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because he's popping out a little bit, and I want to. So one of the ways I could do that is probably go back to my layer mask on maybe the tool one, and maybe paint some things back in. Could darken these areas around his eyes a little. I'm sure he would love that I'm making him look super evil. And again, it would depend on what the story is and all that kind of thing. And I'm just going to go back and forth. And then I might switch brushes and try a different brush. I might come in here and go through my color palette. Like that's a little more integrated. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to pop it out too much. I might go to the original, which I think is here, and now go with my sponge tool and saturate and just see if, yeah, see how I can saturate things out and start lighting them a little bit. That's too much. Down here. And I like coming in here and lighting some of this stuff. Like I like all this texture down here. Because if you notice now, it's not reading so much as tools, it's just texture.
Yeah. That's why it's almost like you could take something totally different and make it work for what you're creating.
And I would be doing all this with an eye towards my storytelling and all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't just, but what I like is that this is very similar to how I work in traditional media, where I'll throw things down and then start painting into it and pulling out of it. And I can do the same thing here. And I like it a lot when I start with my own painting, and I might start with a very rough, simple painting, pull it into Photoshop and start tweaking it and start getting all these ideas in here now, right?
Yeah.
And then I could come in here and start adding all sorts of elements in here. And a lot of them I would just paint. Like if I wanted some flames or something in here, I'd probably paint them.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so but you're understanding the back and forth of traditional media into the digital idea, right?
Yeah. I'm definitely gonna mess with that.
And then I want to do this real quick. Let's see if we can go to like a charcoal gray. Sometimes this will work better with a color on an overlay, but let's try this. I don't know why I'm going down. It's easier to go down the evil rabbit hole than the normal rabbit hole. And I might come in here and start defining. I could even give his eyes like some weird makeup or something if I wanted to. But what I'm trying to do here is define some of the shapes where the shadows are, just to define that face a little more. Right?
Yeah.
And then I could also sort of incorporate this other stuff in that sort of beard idea. This guy seems like the nicest guy in the world too, so this is a weird thing to do to him. And then I could come in here. There's a lot of red bouncing around in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I might come in here. Oops. Hang on. Gosh darn it. Hang on. It's a small shape. Oh, let's just do it like this. So I can probably take a little of that. It's going to be too strong initially. So I can give the bottom of his eyes a little bit of that reflection from that light. Yeah?
Yeah.
Hang on. I got to combine these. And again, I still might go through my overlays and see if anything looks cool. And I'll do one more thing on here. I don't think I need to do that. I'm going to leave it on normal, but I'm going to knock down the opacity a little bit. Then I might come up here just to give a contrast. I'll start off with the screaming kind of color. Well, that's kind of cool. And then maybe, okay, so now we have a warm, cool thing happening. And then maybe, I don't know if I could do this. Let's do this. Let's say I'd probably go and break up the edges again. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to save as. And some of this stuff would be cool for that murky tank.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Let me find. Okay, so we want, oops. I'm going to flatten this, which, you know, if I'm going to flatten anything, I always keep the layered version. Don't ever flatten all your versions.
Yeah.
And then again, I might go back and come in here and make another layer mask and get the edges soft again or torn up again. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And
But
then
you'll
I
usually start on a new page once you build too many layers.
No.
Or-
The only reason I'm doing that right now is because I want to try something and I don't think it'll do it on all the layers.
All right, that makes sense. But just usually stay on the same one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm usually building, because here's the reason. I don't want to flatten because this is very much a spontaneous kind of thing for me, or probably for anybody. And if I flatten it and I start going down another rabbit hole and then I go, shit, I want to go back and change that color back there. Now I'm locked.
Yeah, I've done that before.
Yeah, and I don't want to do that. And there's a lot of things you can do with sample all layers and things like that. And I probably could with this. I'm doing it for time. So let's go here. Let's go iris blur. Oh, let's go here. Ultra blur gallery. And then I can totally control how much of this fades out and how much it fades out. So maybe right about there. Which kind of gives a little bit of a smoky element back there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd have to come in here and go. And now you got to figure out. And by the way, there'd be a whole process with me probably distressing the type, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just something really simple like that, you know. Everything doesn't have to keep following the same idea. Or maybe this has a really contrasting. Let's try this. I like to do this. I like to just run through the color spectrum and see what makes sense. Sometimes I can find something that contrasts. It's kind of cool. Feels like it's in the same family right about, or I could even do this. I could just sample this surrounding color here and see what that does instead of contrasting it. Let's do one more thing. I'm going to do that same thing I did earlier and see. I want something that's really messed up looking. Because again, I can paint this mask in and out, so I can adjust it later. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because when you're doing this, the clipping mask, it basically makes a layer mask. Then I'm going to come in here with a regular brush. Maybe not. Let's just do that for now. The hell happened? Oh, no. Yeah, it should go underneath. Hang on. I think. I always get this mixed up. There it is. And then I can paint this in and give it a background. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I would still have to come back in here and paint my mask further in. There we go. And I like doing it real time because then I can really see it. And there's your latest horror movie poster. Yeah?
Yep.
Or Marilyn Manson album cover. And then I can go the other way. I can switch back and forth and I can paint things back in or out. Does that all make sense?
Yep.
But that's sort of how you get that Matt Mahoney thing.
All right. Looks like fun.
Yeah, it is. I think it's super fun, man. I'm going to do another one tomorrow, maybe. Trying to see if I have a, and then, you know, I'd have to I like the way it gave his flesh tone sort of a really sort of almost cadaverish kind of look. Right?
Yeah.
And then I could come back in and, you know, it's endless, right? At some point,
Yeah.
At some point I would go, that's it. I think that would be it, you know, but
Mhm.
part of the point of this to me is like play around going back and forth with digital and this,
Yeah.
right? I really think it makes a difference if you bring some, and again, some of it's just stuff I got laying around like that. That's what we started with right there.
Yeah.
Right? It just makes a difference, you know, it really does. And I like to start with sort of a painted main image, and I might not even paint it all out. I'll paint enough and everything that I go, okay, I can bring that in and start playing with it, you know. And then, you know what, maybe I want to put a little, maybe I want to put fire or something somewhere or something, you know, and maybe I'll paint that on board or paper or something, and I'll scan that and I'll pop that in, and I'm pulling my own elements back and forth. And I might pull like that tool file that was in there and get that texture. And I'm pulling from a lot of different things. Or, I mean, like my dad used to always have all these like tools like that lying around. I probably would have just went and shot my own stuff and
Yeah.
put that in. I like it when I'm pulling and making my own things, and once in a while pulling this, that, and the other. I might go outside and go, wow, it's a really interesting texture on that rock out there, and I go take a picture of it and I'll pull that in and just keep building it like that, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it has to feel not like just a bunch of random crap. It has to look like you were making decisions along the way,
Yeah. That makes sense.
because it's actually not random.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Does everybody else understand all this?
Yes, sir.
So if you're thinking about going down this route, and I go down the dark route here because it's just easy to do dark. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, if I was going to go, hey, I'm going to use this technique to make everything look happy, it'd be a little bit different. And anything I just did in here, they're pretty straightforward, but anything I just did in here that you're not familiar with and you want to try that, tell me. Yeah.
All right.
So if you make a shape like this is the one thing you got to remember about a clipping mask in Photoshop. If you make this shape, it feels like it should have to be on top of it to mask off what's beneath it.
Yeah.
The mask is actually underneath it. And then you just hold Option and go in between the two layers, and it'll change. The little cursor will change, pink, and that's it.
All right.
Okay, just remember, it's going to feel like you're supposed to put it on top and you actually put it underneath,
All right.
which never makes sense to me. See, there's our original thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you notice too, that's got a lot of brush strokes and everything in it, really interesting edges and stuff, right?
Does it matter what color you do it in on the first, like how you did it in red? Does it
No,
matter?
I don't think it does. I think it just reads the shape.
All right.
What I was doing before that I screwed up on is I actually grabbed the wrong layer, and that layer was on like 48%, so it wasn't doing it 100%.
Mhm.
You know,
Alright.
and you can go back and forth. So you can just put your brush on. I don't even know if you have to put it on black and white, but I think you should put it on black and white. And like black paints it out and white paints it back in.
Mhm.
So you can go back and forth on your mask,
Yeah.
which is really nice.
hmm
Okay, man. Any questions, you guys?
Nope.
All right. I'm not going to keep you tonight because I just feel like we're working now. Yeah.
Sounds cool.
But get to work. Like
You
we
got
have
it.
2 weeks. So whatever you're doing, get on it. Right. And if you're still doing a couple of more sketches, get them to me before Monday. Yeah.
Yes.
Because I want
Get her done.
to approve them. Yeah.
Yep.
Everybody good?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Candace?
Yeah. Good.
It's really good if you want to get crazy lighting too, because you can really pull some crazy lighting into it that would be hard to get, traditionally. Because you're painting with light digitally. You're not painting with flat reflective color. You're painting with something that's emanating light. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's really easy to get super vibrant, interesting light.
hmm
All right, you guys, if you need to hit me before Monday, make sure you do, because we're getting towards the end of the term. So I want to make sure that everybody's good. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, you guys.
Thanks, Mike.
If you
Thank you.
need
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mike.
if you need me, contact me.
Okay.
Monday.
Peace out.
Peace out.